49ers on a bye week, licking their wounds, getting healthier, but they might make some additions. Let's take a look at the trade market. What could benefit the San Francisco 49ers to add as they get ready for their next game in Week 10? Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always. A very special guest on this Wednesday episode. If you know, you know. We'll get to that momentarily. I do want to thank everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all of our everyday listeners. Shout out to the everydayers out there and all the newcomers and the new listeners to Locked On 49ers. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And now let's bring on today's guest.
Winkler, come on down. Wow.
Can't believe it.
Wink, what's happening, my man? Better vibes this week after a big win over the hated rival Dallas Cowboys, right? So the 49ers are heading into a bye here, and at 4-4, three-way tie atop the NFC West. Croc and I yesterday went over the standings and talked about how, man, winning the West is kind of the goal. You look at how many teams have really good records. Tiebreakers aren't really favoring the San Francisco 49ers right now. They really got to focus on winning the division. That is the best path into the playoffs for the San Francisco 49ers. And a big step was being an NFC team and beating the Dallas Cowboys, getting back to 4-4 here as we head into the bye week, week 9. We're going to take stock and kind of have a little checklist what the Niners need to do during this bye week. But real quick, looking back at the Cowboys game, and you brought this up before we were on the air, Nick, and Trevon Diggs had an interesting encounter with a reporter after the game. And but he was on a podcast as well, right, Nick, talking about how maybe the Dallas Cowboys got outcoached by the San Francisco 49ers, because there's been games this season where we talked about, man, did the 49ers get outcoached? So it's good for them to be on the other side of this one.
Yeah, it was the Be Our Gridiron podcast. It was yesterday, I believe, and they asked him straight up, what was the biggest factor in that football game and the 49ers winning that football game? And he said, I think it was their coaching. I feel like we got out coached. They had a counter for everything we were trying to do. And that's why they won that football game. So that's what you want to hear, right? Because you said it. There's been a lot of talk this season so far about, is Kyle getting out coach? What's going on with special teams coordinators, defensive coordinators? What's going on with this 49ers coaching staff? Well, they won a football game. It wasn't the prettiest football game. That fourth quarter got me a little scared there at the end, but they held on long enough to get that win. And you got to like that going forward as a 49er fan. But it's crazy because you look back a week ago, you guys are talking about the West and how, it's kind of the path right now to the playoffs is the best path for the 49ers. A lot's changed in a week, right? A week ago, 49ers, are sitting there and all of a sudden you're like, oh, the Rams are nothing. The Cardinals, we don't need to worry about that. Well, the Cardinals go out and get a big win. The Rams get healthy and look like a good football team. And then Seattle loses. And then the 49ers, it's like, is it going to be that kind of ride all season for the 49ers in the West? It's sure looking like it.
It absolutely feels that way. And because Croc, correct me if I'm wrong, each week has felt like such a big swing. The Seahawks was like, oh, this is a must win. Got to beat the Seahawks. Beat the Seahawks. Oh, okay, cool. This team's right back where they need to be, top the NFC West. And then you lose to the Chiefs and look like you're not even in the same division as the Chiefs, in a different league. And it's like, oh, the Niners are terrible. Maybe they should just pack it in, and then they win. And it's like, oh, no, it's okay. Beat the Cowboys. Everyone feels good. 4-4 bye, get McCaffrey back, trade deadline. And it's like, it's just been an absolute roller coaster. The Rams, even more so. We were talking on Peacock and Williamson about the Rams 2 weeks ago. We're like, there's all these rumors about Cooper Kupp. It was like, oh, blow it up, man. They're terrible. They got no players. If you trade Cooper Kupp, well, you might not, why would you even hold on to Matthew Stafford at that point? Blow the whole thing up. And then Puka Nacua comes back, Cooper Kupp comes back, and all of a sudden they look like a different team. It's like, well, they're half a game out of first place in the West. So, they've had an even bigger roller coaster of what one game could possibly mean. So, I think maybe the message is not to overreact every week to everything that happens in the NFL, but yeah, maybe it is just going to keep being a roller coaster this year.
I think a lot of that says just how important each game is right now. The 49ers, they don't have the wiggle room that you ideally would like midway through the season. Every game that you lose is so pivotal to how this turns out, especially since you lost so many divisional games to start this season. So, and then conference games that you lost to start this season. So the 49ers, they are kind of on a tight leash with the importance of each game. I don't think it's people are overreacting. I think they're reacting as they should, which every game is super, super, super important for the 49ers right now.
Croc, do you think the 49ers need to do anything? We'll get into specifics of what that is that the 49ers should do, but just from where the 49ers are right now, bye week 4-4, do they just need to chill out and then play more ball? Do they need to go back to the drawing board with X's and O's? Do they need to add players? Like, what do you think? Like, what's that checklist look like for the 49ers during the bye week?
I think the checklist starts with, what is typically available at the trade deadline. I think everybody would say, hey, we got to improve offensive line, but there's so many teams that would love to improve offensive line. They're not just trading offensive linemen at the trade deadline. I mean, shoot, when's the last time you've ever heard of a tackle being traded at the trade deadline? I can't think of a time at all, at least not off the top of my head. So, they're not going to be able to improve offensive line. More than likely, defensive line depth at edge. That may be something where you can go get a guy, maybe a half season rental potentially. So if there's an edge out there, but I think receiver, and it's tough because Dionte Johnson is a guy who just got traded before we hopped on here to record. But for the receiver position, even if it's not like a stud, the 49ers, they could use a little depth. We talked about Kendrick Bourne a week or so ago. Adding Kendrick Bourne to this room, I think it just gives you a little bit more sense of security, because right now you're banking on Deebo Samuel, who is a terrific receiver, but he's very specific with how they utilize him. Then you got a rookie who just played in his second game of the season, and then you have Jacob Cowing, and you hope to get guys like Jawan Jennings back soon, but there have been guys that have just been out. So if you added Kendrick Bourne, again, he doesn't have to be the guy, but just having someone come in that understands how to work in your offense, what's to be expected, and just to be able to contribute, even if it's for 2 to 3 catches, or you don't address anything, and all of a sudden a guy goes down and you have to play Ronnie Bell for more than I think most people would like.
So I'm looking at it was just so right before we started recording, the deal went through, and now I'm seeing what the compensation is on the Dionte Johnson to Ravens trade, and it's a little bit surprising here. Not much of a return at all, in fact, and it looks like the Ravens are sending a 5th round pick in next year's draft, 2025 5th round pick to the Panthers, and they're getting back Dionte Johnson and the Panthers' 6th round pick. So it's only a pick swap of 6th to 5th round. And the Panthers are going to be drafting like at the very top. If the Ravens win the Super Bowl, that's 1 pick.
Yeah.
Or I guess
back-to-back picks.
However many, the Panthers might get the 1st pick, and who knows, the Ravens maybe get the 32nd pick. There'll be some comp picks in there. So however many comp picks are given out could potentially be the difference in those picks. So it's nearly free that they're giving Dionte Johnson to the Ravens. And when you look at that, and the Panthers are eating salary, so the Ravens only will owe him $625,000 the rest of the year. That is about as free as you can get for a starting caliber wide receiver. I mean, if that's the cost, I don't know how the 49ers weren't in on that one, guys.
Yeah. Guys, and I was thinking you don't need to get a star, right? Or you don't need to get someone that is 100%, he's a day one starter. But if you're just talking about a 5th, 6th round pick swap, and you're paying them next to kind of nothing, then you 100% should bolster up your receiver room, and maybe Kyle's like, well, it's not a fit. I think he's exactly how Kyle likes his receivers. He's quick, he's twitchy, he could play outside, he could play in the slot, he could line up in so many different areas. He's a, like kind of a target hog type guy. Yeah, that's tough. I, again, didn't think you needed him, but if that was the price, why not?
Yeah, that's nothing, right? I mead that just makes your team better. And what are you giving up, really? Like you said, a couple of picks, a couple of spots in the draft there. That's a head scratcher to me. I don't know why Carolina would do that. I mean, maybe he was bad in the locker room or something. I mean, what's the other reasoning behind that? Plus, you're eating all the money. Like, what's the real benefit for Carolina in that trade? I don't get it one bit. But there's got to be more like that, right? More trades like that available out there for the 49ers. Bring in a veteran receiver, somebody who's been around the league, knows how to play in the NFL, and can help your team right now. Because you said it, if Juwan Jennings doesn't come back, or if he gets hurt again, or if anybody gets hurt, this wide receiver group is going to get thin and young really, really fast. We saw how, at the end of the game when Deebo wasn't out there, late in the fourth quarter, and you got Bell and you've got, Pearsall, and you've got Conley lining up, and you're like, is this our three wide receivers set right now? Like, this is a little rough.
I actually don't think wide receiver is the top trade need for the San Francisco 49ers. And maybe this is them saying that as well, because it sounds like nobody else is offering anything if that's all that they were able to get. Or maybe the Panthers were only getting offers from teams like, the Bucs in their own division and didn't want to do that, wanted to send him to the AFC. I don't know if Dionte Johnson's the type of player where like, well, we can't send him in the conference with a trade or something like that. So next, I want to get more into this trade deadline, some names that are out there for the 49ers, the position I think should be the number one topic for the Niners when they are internally discussing what they need and when they're making calls. We'll get to all of that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Built. What is Built Rewards? Well, listen up, renters, because if you ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air, it's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent every month. Pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines, 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Earn points by paying rent right now when you join built.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. Join built.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. So a wide receiver, I think, is a need. And Dionte Johnson is probably one of the more similar players stylistically in his skill set to Brandon Ayuk, if that's a type of player you're trying to replace. So, that pick swap, 5th and a 6th, is almost nothing, and you're not paying any salary. So for that cost, it's like, bring in a Dionte Johnson. So no brainer from the Ravens standpoint there. I wonder if the 49ers aren't looking at wide receiver. I think wide receiver could be an option, and it would have to be cheap. That would have been cheap, and he's one of the better names available. Mike Williams, Darius Slayton's out there. There is maybe a couple more names. No, not many major names. I mean, maybe who's the
I like Slayton a lot too. Obviously, he had a big game Monday night for the New York Giants, but I've always liked this game and felt like maybe a little underutilized in New York, just with the quarterback situation and whatnot. But if you add him to the 49ers room for the rest of this season, again, a lot of the receiver talk with the 49ers because you are without Brandon Ayuk. So you kind of add a guy in there, and we look at like Chris Conley. I think he's a much better version of Chris Conley, at least at this point in Chris Conley's career. I think a guy like Slayton could definitely help the 49ers a little more. Deep ball threat as well.
Yeah, not only Juwan Jennings and Ayuk and Deebo, but Conley's got an injury as well now that he's dealing with through the bye week, a week-to-week injury for him. Let's see. There is Kendrick Bourne. His name's been thrown out there. And the Patriots, they just traded Josh Uche, an edge guy, to the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're clearly willing to make some deals and make some trades, and their eyes on the future there, as it should be for the New England Patriots. Who else? Who's the the Raiders receiver, the big slot receiver.
Jacoby Myers?
Yeah, Jacoby Myers used to be a Patriot. Now he's a Raider. His name has been thrown out there as a possibility. Wink, do any of those wide receiver names jump out to you?
I mean, again, I'd rather have any of them out on the field than all the names you named, more so than Conley, more so than Bell. So it would definitely improve that 49ers wide receiver room. But I feel like, for me, I don't even know if they necessarily need to go and sign somebody. We talked about this a couple weeks ago as the trade, maybe it was last week, trade deadline coming up. On the bye week, the 49ers just need to get healthy. They need to get their guys back. They need Juwan Jennings back. They need Deebo to get some rest and to come back fully recharged. They need Dre Greenlaw to come back. They need McCaffrey to come back. Like, there's a lot of guys still kind of waiting in the wings, getting ready to come back. I mean, maybe you could, you mentioned the offensive line. Maybe you could bolster the defensive line a little bit, because the run game isn't great right now on defense. So that seems like an area maybe the 49ers could address. Secondary looks pretty solid right now. I mean, Lenore seems like he's playing out of his mind. I love watching him play.
I just mentioned how usually offensive linemen aren't available, but I did just read that Cam Robinson, offensive tackle for Jacksonville Jaguars, may be available. So that's a name right there to keep an eye on.
Did you guys see Dan Campbell's press conference real quick? Or when they were questioning him, they're asking, "Oh, do you think that your office or your front office is going to bring you somebody in?" He's like, "Maybe. I think so. Stand by." Like, he's like bouncing around like a little kid. They're like, an edge rusher. He's like, "Wait and see." It's like, whoa, this guy's got some news. Somebody's excited about something.
They're active. Well, it's funny because a lot of times they think this happened with the Steelers and Tomlin. And, from what I understand, Mike Tomlin was like getting information from his GM, and he and Arthur Smith thought they were going to have a new shiny wide receiver in August over there. And they're like, "Oh, here it comes." And guess what? That never ended up happening. So you kind of got to get those deals over the finish line too.
Pittsburgh Steelers playing some pretty good football.
Yeah, Russell Wilson looks good.
Yeah, he's a perfect fit for them. George Pickens. I saw a really interesting stat with George Pickens because he had the double foot tap, but it was one foot twice, and he didn't get the other foot down, and it erased that touchdown. He's had the most point. I know this because he's on my fantasy team in my league against Nick Winkler. That's why this stood out so much to me. He's had the most fantasy points overturned in a season, and he's more than twice the next guy.
Oof.
Because like touchdowns taken away from penalties or touchdowns that get reviewed and then overturned, like 30 points worth of fantasy points so far this season undone he's just a weird player. Like, nothing is normal for that guy ever, including when he scores a touchdown. Like, nope, never mind, it's not a touchdown. You got 2 feet, you got 1 foot in twice and not the other foot. Pretty unbelievable. But yeah, the Steelers look really good. They could be they weren't allowed because of NFL rules to trade for Dionte Johnson because they had already traded him away. There's like a collusion rule where you can't like borrow players from each other. So you can't trade a guy and then the same season that same team trades you back.
Is that what it is? Is it just per season? Is it like a calendar year? What's the time frame on that?
I think it's during. So that happened in the off season. So it must be like a full, like calendar.
Maybe it's a rolling year or something.
Yeah. So I think like once the new league year starts, then it's a new. But you can launder that player through a third team though. So if a different team can trade him back to you, but not the team you traded him to. So
I love how you got some organized crime money laundering going on over here.
I mean, GMs will get, they'll get their hands dirty if they have to, I think. But yeah, so Dionte Johnson would have been a nice fit. The Steelers need a wide receiver, so I think we might still see some wide receiver movement. But to me, guys, I think it's edge. I think or defensive line. Feliciano's coming back, so he's an addition that you're going to get back for the 49ers. I think the Niners like their line and like their depth. I don't think they're going to make a move, and like Croc said, like, there's offensive linemen aren't available. Like Cam Robinson, he's one of the rare offensive linemen that actually have been traded before too, right? Didn't Robinson already get traded to the Jaguars or from the Jaguars before? Maybe Tyron Smith from the Jets would be a veteran tackle because they've got a rookie there that they could plug in.
And when we hear the name Tyron Smith, we think of Dallas Cowboy, All-Pro, terrific offensive line, one of the best offensive tackles in the league. He is not that.
No, he's not that anymore. He's not that anymore. And to be
honest,
is
he better than McKivitz? I think that's the question.
Right. That would be the big
question.
Would it be worth it? And He might have a hefty salary too. I'm not sure exactly what his cap hit is right now, but the Jets would definitely
and have to play right tackle, which he's played left tackle his entire career.
Right.
Oh, I think he played a little bit of guard for the Cowboys towards the end there.
Yeah, he did. I would call the Jets though. Hassan Reddick, and who knows? I still think Devontae Adams could get flipped by the Jets, and so maybe there is a potential for a difference-making wide receiver. Maybe that would be it. But Hassan Reddick, Azeez Ojulari from the New York Giants as a pass rusher. Zadarius Smith, I think, is maybe one of the more likely names, pass rusher for the Cleveland Browns that could be potentially on the move. I thought about this before the season, but the way the Washington Commanders are playing, I guess they can't really sell now, but their rookie second rounder, who I liked a lot, potentially for the 49ers at the end of round 1, Johnny Newton's back on the field for them. Could they trade Jonathan Allen? So if the Niners want to go D-tackle, could they make that move? I would say that Niners defensive line would be the place I would go first before wide receiver. But if wide receiver, like if Dionte Johnson is going to be free, like, okay, and
I still can't get over that.
And the Josh Uche trade was for a 2026, not even this next draft. The next draft after that's a 6th round pick. So these are, that's nothing for a team that's trying to go win a Super Bowl to throw a 6th round pick 2 years from now, or a pick swap of late 5th to an early 6th round pick. I mean, those are kind of no brainer trades if you think they can make a difference. So if that's the going rate for some of these veteran players, then yeah, I definitely expect the 49ers to make a move and be active. Next, let's get into a wink, wish, watch, and more from today's Winky Wednesday episode of Locked On 49ers. The final segment is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action right now with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel's special offers, and they're always giving our listeners great offers. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win on that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you want to check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. You can do it all in the very same place, on the same app, or on the same website at FanDuel.com, and maybe get informed on the next bets you want to make. And live in-game betting is so fun. NFL, World Series, NBA, and NHL getting going. You can find all of that action at FanDuel, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So download the app today, get America's #1 sportsbook, or go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. All right, Wink. The Niners' 31st ranked special teams going up against the #1 ranked special teams in the NFL, and the Niners came out with a victory. Did they come out with a special teams victory, Wink?
Well, I mean, when you don't give up a ton of yards like they've been doing almost every single game, I think you got to call that a victory. Kind of a pedestrian day for Wishnowsky. He had that great punt at the end of the first half that they pinned, but like the 2-yard line or something. That was his only inside the 20. But when you really look at it, you got to remember that if you're punting from your own 20 or your own 30, it's going to be really difficult to get that ball inside the 20, right? And I've heard that he's really been working on his hang time, really trying to get that ball higher in the air so that will kind of prevent more returns, right? I heard somebody on the telecast talk about he's never kicking the ball out of bounds, and that's true. I mean, can you think of one time this year when Wishnowsky kicked the ball out of bounds? I mean, maybe that's something he should put into his game. I know he's just so good at that, like the knuckler that he kicks, and he's also got the bounce back, where it hits inside the 5 or inside the 10 and kind of comes back. So he's got a lot of skills with his foot, but maybe he does need to kind of learn that. What is it? The corner kick, the coffin corner kick that he used to do in Madden during the skills challenge. Maybe he needs to work a little bit more on that to prevent some of these big long kick returns, really.
Were you the type of guy to practice? I had one friend playing Madden back in the day that used to practice special teams so much. Like he was into it. And he was like the best special teams guy. He was awesome with punts. He was great on returns. He had all this he had all his techniques down and how to return to get the best returns. And it was like, you're a weirdo, dude. You're spending this much time getting good at Madden special teams. What is wrong with you?
I mean, if you're gonna play for real, you got to play all three aspects of the game, right? So you got to make sure if you need a 55-yard field goal at the end of the game that you know exactly when to time that little arrow going back and forth, right? You need to be able to pin the defense deep. It's an important part of the game. Whoever your friend is, genius.
Yeah. Croc, how are you on the third phase?
I don't know if I was that into special teams, but there are a lot of video games, and Madden as well. It's about muscle memory with the hands. So the more you have that muscle memory down with kicking those field goals, which field goals matter, it's a huge thing. Understand knowing exactly how you to kind of level that arrow and make sure you get to that full swing. Yeah, it actually is a big job. Maybe I should have practiced it more.
I've seen some more names floated out there for the 49ers. And one that always comes up, so I think we should address it because some of our listeners always ask us, should the 49ers do what they have to do to reunite with DeForest Buckner?
He just can't stay healthy. I feel like the last couple of years, I play in another fantasy football league. Brian, don't get too upset with me. I'm not cheating on oblong balls. It's a ridiculous league where you actually have to have like 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 safeties, this sort of thing. Yeah. So, and I've had DeForest Buckner the last couple of years, and he's missing a lot of time. And so, if you can get a guy like that again for the Dionte Johnson rate of next to nothing, yeah, of course you bring a guy like that in. But I wouldn't give up too much for him.
He's hurt right now.
Did Christian Kirk get traded?
Yeah. No, he got hurt, right? Didn't he get hurt in the last game?
That's what happened. Okay, he got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt, so it kind of takes him off.
Season-ending injury.
Yeah, it takes him off the table.
Another one?
Stephon Diggs, ACL too. So, yeah, wide receivers going down left and right around the NFL right now.
That's brutal.
Harold Landry, he was an old draft favorite of mine.
That was mine when we did our draft, guys. When we all first met at that bar, and we were talking about who the 49ers should take, I was like, Harold Landry. And then they took McGlinchey.
We were talking about Landry as being a first-round guy. He slid in the second round and went just before the Niners traded up to get Dante Pettis. So they should have moved up and got. Remember, that was the classic offseason where John Lynch said, you got to be pretty good to beat out Cassius Marsh, or whatever his comment was about Cassius Marsh. And then what happened? They had no pass rush. Then the next offseason, they're like, oh yeah, so we need some of that. So they ended up drafting Bosa and trading and signing D Ford as well. So maybe bring back the team they should have had. Bring back Buckner and Harold Landry to play together on the defensive line with Bosa, as it all should have been originally.
A wink, shadow 49er.
There you go. Yeah, that was a good one, man. I love Harold Landry. I've never seen anybody with the ability to run under the table like Harold Landry, to use a scouting term. Turn the corner, getting low, being able to run under the table. He had that ability for sure. And defensive line, man. I think that's where it's at. Croc, you think maybe wide receiver over any other position?
It's what's available. That's the biggest thing. So, again, if I have my choice, I'm always down to go get me another defensive lineman. But if that's just not available to the 49ers, or at least not someone that's going to make them better, then it sounds like receiver, or at least adding some kind of depth. Because, again, if a guy goes down right now, 49ers kind of in trouble at the receiver position, and now you're not going to be able to add anyone. And the more guys go down, the more that Ronnie Bell name starts creeping across. I don't want to dog out Ronnie Bell, but I think we know how at least the fan base feels about him right now, and what he's able to contribute to the team if he needs to have a bigger role. I'm not sure where anyone's looking forward to that right now.
As the voice of the fan, I'll dog out Ronnie Bell. All right. I'm okay with that.
You've been dogging out Ronnie Bell all year long. Would you do the same compensation that the Jets paid for Devontae Adams if the Jets decided to make him available, which was a third that could become a second if you get to the NFC Championship game? I think it was like if you get to the AFC Championship game, it becomes a second for the Jets. So would you do the same deal? A third that becomes a second if the Niners get to the NFC Championship game?
Win now, right? Yeah. Let's go.
Okay, there you go. Devontae Adams, future 49er. All right. Wink, Appreciate you jumping on as always. And thanks to all the everydayers out there and all the new listeners alike at Locked On 49ers. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you are listening to this podcast. And Croc and I back tomorrow. No crossover Thursday this week. So we're gonna get into the tape a little bit, break down some of your San Francisco 49ers players, namely some DBs, Mustafa, Renardo Green, and a whole lot more coming your way on Locked On 49ers. Talk to you next time.